All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We're going to talk some horse racing today, Drew. In a little bit, we're going to welcome in Kenny Rice to break down the Bluegrass Stakes and the Santa Anita Derby tomorrow. But first, we're going to talk a little NBA with the regular season wrapping up. So let's get straight into it. Let's bring in NBC lead writer Kurt Helin, who is an awards voter. We're going to break down those awards. Kurt, let's get stuck right into it. Let's start with MVP. And I got to say, on Tuesday afternoon, I really thought that Giannis was going to win MVP. And then Joel Embiid scored 52 points on 20 of 25 shooting on national television. And Wednesday morning, the race felt kind of done. And that's what the odds are reflecting now. So where are you at with MVP?
It has been a brutal choice. I've ruled out Jalen Green. And after that, it gets really hard. Even before Tuesday's night showing, I am, at this point, I would call it a strong lean. Like I'm not even. I'm so tight. I'm fully not willing to commit yet. I have a strong lean towards Embiid. He was really close in my mind last year, and look, he has upped his offensive game, and I think Jokic's defense has slid back all season long. Like, this is a season-long award. He slid back. And the guy I've tried to talk myself, frankly, you mentioned it. I've been in and out on Giannis over the last couple of days. He has been the best player in the league on the best team in the league. He has had to carry them because Chris Middleton is out, remains out. They're hoping to get him back for the playoffs. So he's had to take on all this extra load this year and lifted them to the best record in the league. And that said, I'm probably still leaning Embiid. I think just leading the league in scoring and the load he's had to carry for Philadelphia he's been otherworldly. So that's where I stand, guys. You can probably talk me out of it in the next 10 minutes if you want.
I mean, honestly, at this point, I'm plus money regardless of who of these three men win, and I think that's a good place to be. I was anti-Giannis all season long, and then down the home stretch, we made the case pretty clearly, like, okay, this is so murky, this could just default to best player, best team, and we've heard some people already kind of go there, like, hey, like the three good choices. The voter fatigue, I feel like, hurt Giannis the last 2 years, but people are ready to kind of recognize again that he's the best player in the NBA. And of course, the Bucks getting the number one overall seed means a lot. But as Jay mentioned, on Monday, I was pretty sure it was going to be Jokic. On Tuesday, I was pretty sure it was going to be Giannis. And then now here we are Friday, and it's like, oh yeah, no, it's definitely going to be Embiid. So, I think until all the votes are counted, we're really not going to know. And at this point, I don't think there's really a bet to be made. But let me pick your brain on a couple of these other markets, and let's start with sixth man of the year. So this one's been tough because there hasn't really been a good candidate for almost all of the season. And then down the home stretch, the Knicks started playing pretty good basketball. And a lot of that was the emergence of one Emmanuel Quickley. And it's tricky because, he was a hugely important factor in them kind of reaching this sort of, tier 2 contender in the Eastern Conference. Yeah. Don't forget about us. We're the Knicks. And, and I think, to the degree that he's a fun player to really kind of give some praise to, there is still like a pretty decent contingent of people out there who think it should go to Malcolm Brogdon. Where do you stand on this award?
Yeah, nobody's ever overhyped anybody out of New York. So I don't think that's, I'm on Brogdon. I'm with you. Nobody has stood out. There hasn't been a Tyler Hero this year or anything close to it where you're like, this is the guy. And I'm voting for Brogdon. I just think he's been the steadiest all season long, been a key part of what the Celtics do, been part of some of their closing lineups, depending on matchups, and had to take on bigger roles at points this year with guys in and out of the lineup. So just his steadiness gets him there. I got Quickley second, and am I crazy? Malik Monk third? Does that seem? I mean, I don't know where he is on the betting board. I'm trying to decide that third spot still, but I am pretty solidly set on Brogdon 1 and Quickley 2. But Quickley made, like you said, that's a heck of a push down the stretch.
Kurt, keen for your thoughts, because on Quickley, the demerit on him seems to be that he started 19 games, which I think is a little odd, given that previously guys like Lamar Odom and Manu Ginobili and Jamal Crawford, they've all started 20-plus games. Do you think that is going to hurt him with voters, the fact that he's been able to scale up and perform in these spot starts and his off-bench stats aren't as impressive?
I do look at, in this case, like 19 isn't that high to me. Like once, and it is an issue sometimes where guys, end up starting, let's say 25, 30 games because of injury. And those are by far their best games. And they're, like you said, the numbers scale down and aren't as good off the bench. I don't think that's really a quickly case, particularly of late. And 19, we're going to discuss this about 4 more times before you guys kick me off the show today. 19 in today's numbers, like how many games have you played? How many games do you have to step up and play because of load management or injuries or whatever?
Yeah.
Like the number of games played is warped. And in this case, the number of games started is a little warped. There isn't a guy who's only starts. I mean, I wouldn't say never, but like there's rarely a guy who starts 4 or 5 games anymore. If you're a good enough 6 man, you end up starting almost 20 games by default.
Well said. That's huge point there. And honestly, like I'm not trying to change your vote. Brogdon is fun choice. I don't think he's the 6th best player on the Celtics. I think it's Derek White, and maybe the numbers would say he has been sort of the key kind of bench guy that he's played that role. But to your point though, if you haven't started 20 games, then you're really not the 6th man on a team because that means when they needed a spot start, you weren't the guy they went to.
Yeah, Derek White, by the way, he's going to make an all defensive team. He's been such a good defender for them all season long this year. And I had him in the mix. It's like I said, it's a weird year for that because usually there's 1 or 2 guys and then you're trying to fill out the bottom of the ballot. And this year it just feels more wide open. There just hasn't been a clear choice most of the season.
Yep. Before we move on to DPOY, Kurt, I would say the case for Quickly is that in terms of the advanced stats and the plus minus, that's where he really excels over Brogdon. I think as well, just the fact that, he does close games for the Knicks, whereas Brogdon does occasionally, but he's not really in that core Celtics closing lineup. Yeah. Even the game against Embiid on Tuesday, where Jaylen Brown and Rob Williams were out, Missoula closed with Blake Griffin and then Grant Williams over Brogdon. So I think that the case for Quickly would be that 1, advanced stats, he has a huge edge. 2, he's played 12 more games and 500 more minutes than Brogdon. And then 3, I think he's just more important to the Knicks than Brogdon is to the Celtics. And look, Brogdon's had an amazing offensive season. I think that Brogdon is a better offensive player than Quickly, but I think that Quickly, with his defense, with the fact that he's got the best defensive on-off in the entire league, 1, 2, 3 is Quickly 1, and I think it's Draymond 2 and Anthony Davis 3. And so just the defensive impact and the importance to the team is, I would lean Quickly, but certainly Brogdon is a strong candidate. And I think that Monk will probably finish 3rd or 4th.
I think so.
Yeah, thanks a lot for making me now rethink this. my weekend wasn't already crowded enough with trying to figure out 3rd team All-NBA guard.
Okay. Well, let's make it really tough. How do you define a defensive player of the year? What do you look at? What are the right criteria, and who is there a standout candidate this year in your opinion?
Oh, I'll answer the last question first because it's the crux of the issue that I was mentioning earlier. There is a standout candidate. Jaren Jackson Jr. is the best defender in the NBA this season. He hasn't played nearly as many games as Brook Lopez, and it's 16 few as of yesterday. I didn't look this morning. 16 fewer games, more than 600 fewer minutes. And if you go look at the tracking stats, he's defended 800 fewer shots than Brook Lopez. At some point, and this is really what I'm struggling with, this is what I haven't really made up my mind yet on. Jaren Jackson Jr. lifts their defense higher. He is the better defender. He is the best defender in the league this year. But at some point, does that number matter? At some point, do you missing that many games, like where does that fall in setting the tone here? I flipped back and forth. If I had to vote right now, I'd probably vote Lopez, but ask me again tomorrow, Drew, and that could be different. Which is really great radio and great for the bettors. Like, I don't know. It's not really the answer everybody wants, but this is the one I have struggled probably, again, with 3rd team All-NBA guard. it's the one I'm flipping back and forth on, and it comes to the crux of the issue. That's frankly with third team All NBA. When you get to questions like, is Durant's 47 games enough, or does that have to go to Randall? What about LeBron at 50? What about some guys at 53? Like, where's the line for All NBA? And I think it's higher though for Defensive Player of the Year and MVP, because you're just not as valuable if you're not out there.
Yep. And I think, look, I think it's kind of a clear-cut award in a way that Jaren has clearly been the per-minute DPOY, and it's a question of how a voter feels about whether that is enough or whether Lopez playing so many more games is important to the point where it overwhelms Jaren's per-minute impact. The one guy who I'm starting to see a little bit of buzz about, and I thought that this was a pretty locked two-horse race, but Evan Mobley is the best defensive player on the best defense in the league. Yeah. He's also played a ton more minutes than Jaren. And I don't think, again, per minute, he's not the defender that Jaren has been. But do you think Mobley is a chance to get on the ballot?
Absolutely. They've been pushing, and they've kind of pushed internally for it. It's tougher to parse out there because except for Jared Allen missed time. Jared Allen's early season, like first half of the season numbers were insane in his on-off and stuff. So, and I think that's the challenge for is a defensive player, because I'm not a scout. I am not a guy. I watch a lot of basketball. I like to think I know a few things, but this is one where I probably lean on people in the league more, because even the advanced metrics that are out there for defense are defensive. Defensive EPM is probably as good a stat as there is out there, and it's flawed. And so I probably talk to scouts and people in the league and front office people more about this award than anything, because it's the one and coach, because I'm not in the locker room, like in the same way as they are. Like, that's the one I'm trying. It's sometimes hardest to get your head around. And but like I said, it just comes back to how much am I going to value the games? And I don't know that. And in Mobley's case, how do you parse that with what is the best back line in the NBA when they're healthy? And by the way, Cavs Knicks is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Going to be fun.
Yeah. Well, by defensive APM, Kurt, you got to vote Alex Caruso.
Unstoppable force that is Alex.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, I don't want to knock Alex. Is a really good defense.
Sure. Defense. Yeah, no, he's had a fantastic year. Let's get to what I think is, in a way, the most compelling award, and that's Most Improved Player, which is a very nebulous award in terms of the criteria. I would argue that last year, the most improved player in the NBA was Nikola Jokic, who was coming off an MVP season and improved an incredible amount, but it tends not to go to established players. So this year is a really interesting race. There's, I'd say, two top candidates and then a third dark horse in Jalen Brunson. But the top two are Lauri Markkanen and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Markkanen was the clear favorite, but has now been a little bit out of sight, out of mind, while Shai has surged and kept his team playing meaningful games. And they have a chance to clinch a play-in spot in the next couple of days. Where do you sit on this one, Kurt?
Yeah, this is one where when I started, I was with you. I'm like, man, Shai's coming on. And by the way, I voted for – I'm not a guy who believes – look, that it shouldn't go to a star. I voted for Ja Morant last year, and I got pushback on that. And I'm like, why'd you vote for him? I'm like, I thought it was the most improved player. I thought it was the guy who improved the most. Sure. Not the we used to think you sucked, congratulations award.
Welcome back to relevance award. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when I dived into it this year, even with the slump and the fact that the Jazz are, this wasn't on Lauri Markkanen. The Jazz, I think, caught everybody off guard at the start of the year anyway and threw off their extreme tanking plans early, but Danny Ainge does not give up easily. Lauri Markkanen, when I pulled it up, when just like you see the leap he made, not heavily in terms of minutes, but in terms of load, in terms of role, in terms of efficiency, in which area, and other advanced stats too. I just think Lauri Markkanen really, really did step up that much this year, more than anyone else. And so, yeah, he's going to go first for me. And third is going to be third is still tricky. Probably Brunson. I was looking at again, I didn't think it was a terribly deep class. I was desperately trying to come up with and I wanted so badly to go, nobody's looking at this guy except I just couldn't find that guy. So yeah, it is Laurie for me. Once I really dove into the numbers and talked to people, I'm like, yeah, he surprised people. He made the leap.
Yeah. I feel like if you gave Shea the choice, he would take first team All NBA over most improved in a heartbeat. And I think I think he's going to get it. And I think a lot of people, literally like, okay, well, that's our recognition of how amazing this season has been for him. And then we need to recognize Laurie some way. He's not going to make an All NBA, but he did certainly.
He's in that mix for that back into the forward spot, but but it's not, but I'm with you. I mean, Shea's been on my All NBA kind of for a while, but when I really looked into it, like the way the season ended for Lillard, who is going to make an All NBA team, frankly, the way it ended for Doncic, I'll listen to your arguments on fifth spot on the MVP ballot.
Okay.
I
between
think
those two guys, but yeah, but that to me, at the end, if I'm debating them for fifth on the MVP ballot, aren't they your first team All NBA guards?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think honestly, Laurie and Shea are two of the strongest, most improved player candidates we've ever seen. I think just with the leaps that they have made, and with Laurie, like he just looks like a different athlete. The way he's going to the rim, I did not see this in Chicago. And look, there's some people have brought up the fact that Laurie, Brunson, Mikal Bridges, they all changed teams, and there's an element of increased opportunity, whereas Shea's improvement is a little cleaner in a way because he hasn't changed teams and he's playing meaningful games. But look, I don't really think that you can go wrong between Laurie and Shea. I think they both got awesome cases. No surprises, Curtin, Coach of the Year and Rookie of the Year. They seem pretty done. Mike Brown.
Yeah, they're pretty done. Coach of the Year, Brown is. I mean, it's just it's hard not to give it to him. I've actually got Thunder coach Degnall second. Yep. He's been phenomenal this year, but I think especially if you were going to bet this, I don't think it's off the board, isn't it? Like nobody's could have this on the board anymore.
Effectively,
effectively. And then same with Rookie of the Year. I started looking around because Jalen. There was a little bit of a push. There's a hipster push inside the NBA stats community for Jalen Williams.
Sure,
Jalen Williams, the wing, for Jalen Williams, but. It's still not close. It's still Paolo. Paolo was given the keys to the car in a way nobody else was in this class, and he thrived. So,
yep, no, I'm with you there.
And that Magic were a dangerous team. Second, they were like 29 and 25.
Oh yeah, they were the proverbial team no one wanted to play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Celtics are ecstatic that the Magic was locked out of the play-in, given that they beat them every single time.
You know what? I don't know that they're ecstatic now because they're going to get the heat.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting.
I want to say my man
Jimmy Butler is a real thing, man. You do not want a piece of it.
He is a monster. Let's close out with a little conference outright chat. Start with the West, where the Suns are now the clear favorites to win the West. No respect to the number one seed Denver Nuggets, who are sliding a little bit. And then we have the Warriors and the Grizzlies and the Lakers, who haven't even clinched the playoff spot yet, getting a lot of respect with odds makers, probably a little bit too much for mine. Is there a team in particular that you like to win the West, Kurt?
No, the field? No. There isn't.
Fields?
I really don't love anybody. I'll probably end up picking Phoenix. Kevin Durant means that much, especially if they can just keep Chris Paul healthy, and hitting 7 threes a game helps. But Chris Paul healthy. I will say I think people are sleeping on Memphis if Steven Adams comes back.
Okay.
It is critical for their rebounding and their defense and the physicality of their play to have him back. They will miss Brandon Clark in the playoffs, obviously, but if they get Steven Adams back, I think they've got a real chance. I think they are missing a piece without him. And I don't know if I'd say this most years, but I just think in this West, that's a team with their athleticism, their versatility, their depth. They can be a real problem, but we're waiting on the Steven Adams update that's supposed to come this week. So.
Okay. No love for your hometown Lakers, huh? They don't have a chance?
I am in the camp, and I'm not alone. I don't want to steal like a Zach Lowe line or something here. I'm not alone on this. I think they can win any series they're in, but you're going to tell me that kind of thin margin, somewhat fragile team is going to string together 3 tough, gritty wins series wins in a row. I don't see it. I don't. Same with both LA teams. Frankly, I just don't think the Clippers are not physically going to hold up. I fear. Like, I think they're good enough. I just don't believe in those teams for that reason. So, I mean, Drew, you go ahead and bet. You go ahead and bet on the Lakers, though.
Yeah. Not super enticing. Last one for you, Kurt. Regardless of the odds, Celtics, Bucks, or Sixers in the East, who do you think wins?
I'm picking the Celtics, and that's a big bet on Robert Williams being healthy.
Yep.
Isn't it? Like, if Robert Williams is there and playing 25 minutes a night, they've got a real chance. But I'm concerned with the same reason I was saying about the Lakers. If Boston's got to go through Miami and then Philadelphia and then Milwaukee, that's a gauntlet. And Milwaukee's, with all due respect to everyone they're going to face, and the Cavaliers or Knicks in the second round, yeah, that's the yellow brick road comparatively.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Celtics are my horse in the East, but I think your best bet is probably to roll over series prices, because I think you're going to get a lot of respect for the Heat. You're going to get a lot of respect for the Sixers, and then ultimately Celtics are going to be dogs, against the Bucks, and they're going to have to do it themselves. Well, they're going to have to knock out all the other good teams.
Yeah, I think they're capable. I think you saw it in flashes. Christmas, like, they seem to have the Bucks number. Part of it is they get up for those games, and I'm hesitant to read too much into regular season games. But I still, when they click, when like I said, when Robert Williams out there, when their whole team is there, and they've played at a level like they did a couple of weeks ago against the Bucks, you're like, there's just nobody as good as them in the NBA.
Yep, agree. I think they have the highest ceiling. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Kurt. Appreciate the time. Certainly, I know that this is a rough upcoming weekend for voters, and there's a lot to process. Hopefully, gave you something to think about Emmanuel quickly.
You did. You gave me plenty to think about. Something I could see. I should stop going on things and saying, I could be talked into this, because I think it's just going to fill in. But yeah,
exactly. Kurt, can you tell people where to follow you and your content?
NBCSports.com's NBA page. All my stuff is there, including next week. I will actually officially tell you who I voted for and put those awards up there. And plenty of playoff content and previews and talk. And of course, you can just follow me on Twitter at Basketball Talk. I've got a blue check today, check again tomorrow.
Cool.
I'm not paying for it, man. Me and LeBron, we're not in.
I love it. It's a battle for everyone. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Kurt, and have a great weekend.
Take care, guys.
Cheers. All right. Before we bring in Kenny Rice, Drew, every season is draft season. Get your RotoWorld Draft Guide bundle today. Dominate your football, baseball, and basketball drafts packed with profiles, rankings, projections. Order today and get all 3 RotoWorld Draft Guides for the price of 2. Plus, use promo code Barry and save an extra 20% at checkout. All right, let's bring in Kenny Rice. Let's talk about the ponies. Not a typical topic for us, but always good to dive in. Let's start off, Kenny, by talking about Forte, a horse that could be on a historic path, not racing this weekend, but can you explain why Forte is so impressive and will be a heavy favorite in a few weeks at the Kentucky Derby?
Well, guys, it's good to be with you. I mean, Forte's done everything right so far, and it's really a testament to this Hall of Fame trainer, Todd Pletcher. He's won the Derby twice. He's taken a 2-year-old champion. That's rare. I mean, it's almost like the kiss of death. If you're the 2-year-old champion, you probably don't have a chance at winning the Derby. It's happened only a couple of times. So this time around, he's been every step of the way with this horse. I think Todd, kind of paraphrasing here a little bit, not even a straw has gotten in the path so far. Now, but if you look at his Florida Derby, there's 2 ways to look at it. He was challenged, so he either overcame that challenge to show that when he is threatened, he can come through down the stretch like he did, or is he losing a little bit? The cynic might say, well, maybe he's just losing a little bit. I like to see someone challenged. It was like a good basketball team. If you're challenged and you can win down the stretch, you keep looking for him. I like that in the horse. So I think that Todd has the one to beat, and he may come in there with a couple of others. And, he and Brad Cox are going to be loaded. They're going to have probably 30% or so of the Derby field.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing, and I'm glad. I like the way you set that up because the Florida Derby was a fascinating watch. It was a fascinating rewatch. Forte went off at 1-5, which is basically like this is like the race was decided before they got into the gates, and yet, like you said, he looked vulnerable in that race. However, down the backstretch, at the end of in the meat of the race, they flip the switch and boom, he's gone, he wins. So there, in the back of my head, I've been kind of you look at the prices. He's probably 4-1 is something like that is probably a fair price for him to win the Derby. That's where the futures books close. That's probably as short as anyone in today's racing should be to win the Derby. But given his pedigree and his success to this point, he's going to get bet way, way, way shorter than that come race day, which means we are kind of stuck. Like we have to look for an outsider to challenge him. I almost feel like as bettors, like you can't. I'm certainly not walking to the window and betting Forte at 2-1 on race day. Like it's just not happening. And that leads us to who else we should realistically look at. And the Bluegrass Stakes gives us a look at what many people think will be the most likely challenger in Tapit Trice. And I guess, can you set up a little bit the Bluegrass Stakes, why this is an important lead-in race, and what do you think of Tapit?
Well, at Tapit Trice, another Pletcher horse. Pletcher's won the Bluegrass 3 times. He's known primarily for coming through New York or Florida. He's coming through Kentucky, which is not unusual. And he's on a 3-race win streak. Now, Tapit Trice is a horse that's done a lot of things well. And he's been challenged and come through. He deserves to be the 5-2 favorite. That's really not a bad price. He'll probably go off around 2-1, 5-2 coming into the Bluegrass. The interesting part about this Bluegrass, guys, is this is, while I think he's a good favorite, I don't think he's a solid favorite. There's a lot of questionable horses coming in here, but they're supposed to be. This is the equivalent of the Final Four. Who can move on to the championship? That's why they have this race in the Santa Anita Derby in the Wood coming up this weekend. Verifying, another Brad Cox horse, has been up and down. He's not been the kind of horse they thought he was going to be back in the early part of the year. There's a horse coming in here called Raise Cane, who's 9-2. I think he's an interesting bet. He won to Gotham. It was a sloppy track there. He comes in here to Kentucky. He's a horse that closes well. There will be some speed in the race. Wayne Lucas has one of those outside shots that's going to set some pace early on in this Bluegrass. So I think Raise Cane at 9-2 is an interesting betting choice in there. And then the real wild card, it's not a real crazy odds. It's 6-1, but it's Blazing 7, trained by one of the best trainers out there in Chad Brown, and he's a horse that ran 4th last year over the track at Keeneland in the Bluegrass in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and you wonder what's happened to him this year. He has not been anything. He is, and I can use this because this is my alma mater. He's Kentucky ranked in the top 4 going into the preseason that barely got into the NCAA tournament. So that's what he's doing right now. He's not the horse you thought, but yet he's interesting. So I think you got a 6-1 in Blazing 7 and a 9-2 in Raising Cane. And I think they're both capable of pulling, a bit of an upset. I don't think it'd be a shocker if they beat Tapit Trice, although he's clearly the one to beat in this race.
Okay. So this is fascinating. All excellent insight. Tapit Trice, of course, you mentioned, is a Pletcher horse, training, stablemate, right, of Forte. Yeah. These guys are running together, you mentioned also that Brad Cox is, between Pletcher and Cox, they're going to have a huge proportion of the horses who are live to win the Derby. Do you get a sense that between, do you have any inside scoop talking to those guys? Who do they think, like, realistically, they really okay, we're going to put all these horses in, but watch out for blank. Do you get a sense that Pletcher is all in on Forte, or does he have, he's trying to cover his bases here?
I've known these guys forever, and they never tell me anything. Even in secret. Oh, I kind of get an idea. I think that Todd really does have a good feel about Forte. I think he really believes in him, probably as much as any horse he's taken over there. He's not overconfident because he's been there a lot, and he knows how tough it is to win it. Even though he's done it twice, he's still entered more horses than anybody else. And I believe that Brad Cox is pretty confident as well in a horse named Angel of Empire coming out of the Arkansas Derby. If you watch Angel of Empire's race and you watch Forte's race and you don't know anything or care about racing, but you just happen to watch those two horses, you would probably say Angel of Empire looks like the best horse.
Okay.
And, the toughest thing about trying to figure all this out is, again, it's a lot like conference tournaments. You don't know who has the best conference. And that's really what this is. Is the West stronger this year? Is it been through like Arkansas and Louisiana where Cox has primarily run? Is it been like Florida, New York through Kentucky, like that Pletcher's primarily run? That's the real question. So did Angel of Empire beat a stronger field? I'm not so sure that he beat a stronger field than Forte beat in the Florida Derby, but I do think that they're the top two horses going into Churchill. Well, they're in Churchill Downs. They're getting ready for the Derby. They're already there. We'll find out this weekend. I think Tapit Trice will be joining him. I think Verifying will be joining him. So that just adds to the Pletcher and Cox stable going into the Derby.
Indeed. Kenny, let's jump to Santa Anita, where there's another potential Kentucky Derby contender in Practical Move, who was the favorite entering Saturday. What stands out to you about Practical Move?
Well, that last race at San Felipe, I think Practical Move is, the kind of horse that's done everything well. Tim Yakteen's done a real good job with him since, taken over. He looks to be the best in the West. I don't know if the West is as strong as I thought it was going to be. It's kind of interesting out there. Go Rocket Ride's a pretty good horse that Richard Mandela, who doesn't just pop in, as we know, on the Triple Crown scene. I like a trainer, a veteran, a Hall of Famer like Mandela. When he's interested in a Triple Crown race, you got to take a look at him. So I think that the Go Rocket Ride may be a little better price and may have a shot at beating Practical Move, although I think they're the two standouts. And then, a horse that's really the most intriguing horse of the whole weekend, no matter Wood, Bluegrass, or Santa Anita, is Mandarin Hero coming over from Japan.
Okay.
He's only 8-1 in the morning line at Santa Anita. So even though he's not that well known or much known about the competition he's faced, to me, it's like a double-A batter that's getting to step up in the World Series. Don't you love it, Drew, when I throw in all these other sports analogies? But
no, of course.
He really is. I mean, I don't know how good the competition is in Japan. I've talked to people that know a little bit about the racetrack over there. They say it's kind of like a double-A baseball game. It's a minor leaguer step into the majors, but he's 8-1. So, there is that intrigue. And then when you look at what Japanese horses have done recently in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, and of course last year in the Breeders' Cup, it's really to the point where you got to pay attention. So I think he's really an interesting wild card out there. Even though I think that I take a shot with Go Rocket Ride just a little bit over Practical Move, and I think they'll be like 1-2, 2-1, however you want to flip it in there.
Okay, so again, anyone in Southern California who cares about racing knows that this weekend is Derby Day at Santa Anita. Really, really fun experience. If you've never been, check it out. If you don't have anything going on Saturday, it's going to be beautiful. I'll be there. It's going to be fun as can be. And I'll tell you what, I hope Practical Move is ultimately the winner because I got a line through him at the Derby. I don't think he's got the distance I don't think he's got the goods for 1.25 miles, which means I'm hopeful that he takes home this race and, he gets a little bit over bet, because I've already kind of declared it. I'm not taking Forte at the price. I'm out on Practical Move, and I'm going to be looking for somebody to do something surprising. And like the Forte conversation, and this is sort of the final point I'd like your opinion on. If he was as good as he, like a historically good price going off at the Derby, I don't think Pletcher rates him in that Florida Derby. He goes out there and he stomps that field, and he carries that horse, and he sends a message to everyone else in racing that no, forget about this year, it's mine. He doesn't rate him. He doesn't prepare him. I think he's expecting that Forte is going to have a war on his hands at the Derby. I don't know if he has kind of an idea of what the speed is going to be, early speed is going to be in that race, but that was way, way more tactical than I think, warrants this is going to be just a historic runaway from, the best horse in the field. So, and I agree with you. I've seen it. I'm interesting that you brought up the, Angel and Empire as looked better. Eye test was, that's the better horse. So it's going to be fascinating to see if they, how the prices shape up on those guys. But am I reading in that correctly that if you use that kind of a tactical approach instead of just stomping the field at a 1-5 favorite price, that there's a message there?
Well, you know what? That's an interesting theory, and I like it. And the reason is because I think that maybe. And I've had this debate with some friends who are really questioning Forte now. Pletcher is so savvy. He's a savvy guy.
Sure.
I think he might want to, you might want to see if your team can run the fast break or if you can play half court. You
Sure.
want to get a feel for it, because if he had lost the Florida Derby, he's still going to go to the Derby, and he still might even be the Derby favorite, or certainly one of the top 2 or 3 in the Derby if he had lost in Florida. So saying that, I think that Pletcher probably maybe saw some things that he needed to see, that he wanted to see how well he would do. And maybe that will change the strategy with 19 other horses challenging him, that he doesn't want to be around the 3/8 in maybe some of the issues that he had down in Florida, even though obviously he was able to overcome them, because the competition is going to be so tough, so much better coming into that.
Surely.
So, yeah, I like that. I may bring that up to Todd tomorrow on the NBC show. I'm going to be interviewing him before Tappet Trice runs in the Bluegrass.
All yours, yeah.
Drew Dinsick, making things happen. Kenny, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell people how you'll be involved in horse racing coverage the next few weeks?
Yeah, well, tomorrow we're on from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock Eastern. It's a big day. We'll be at the Bluegrass Stakes, of course, what we've talked about, and then we'll be at the Santa Anita Derby. I think the 2 best prep races now that's still left out there. I know the Wood's been going to be run tomorrow, but I think one of the real challengers will come out of one of these races. Maybe 2 real good challengers will come out of these races. And then, of course, leading up to our coverage in the Derby in 3 and 4 weeks on NBC. So, and I'll see you guys in Kentucky.
Yes, you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, you will.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Looking forward to it, Kenny, and thanks for taking the time to join us. We'll speak to you soon.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Cool. All right. Look at you, Drew Dinsick. Forte opinions. Yesterday, giving out Crystal Palace.
I tell you.
What can he do?
The giveaway, and like the reason that I even thought that, like if you watch the replay, and particularly they go straight to the connections, the owner basically, right after he comes through with the win. Like the reaction from the owner was like it was like a bridge jumper kind of relief, right? Like he was like, oh my God, like I can't even imagine what was at stake for him for that horse to win that race, because he was so relieved. And it's like, if you don't put the connections through that, if you have a horse that you think is going to be just historic, and there was some reason that that they ran those tactics. I think because it wasn't an especially fast race.
Okay, well, you sold me, Drew. I'm just a Jimmy Butler guy. So before we get into the NBA, a reminder to download the Roto World app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. All right, let's wrap up with some quick NBA chat. This board is a disgrace. I'm just looking some of these games and these lines, a lot in the 8 to 11 range. Do you have a best bet for tonight?
Yeah, Kings plus 9.5. Warriors. I don't know if you could tell, but they're on the road. And it's the Kings are like, they showed you so much more spirit and fight against the Mavericks than I thought any of us realistically. I say any of us, like the betting market just didn't think the Kings were coming out to play in that game. They came out and played very, very hard. And I think, they may not be at full strength in this one as they're trying to prep for, the playoffs. And that makes sense. I still think, there's not great blood between the Warriors and the Kings. This would be your 3-6 matchup if the playoffs started today. But, I think ultimately the Kings just giving the Warriors, free pass into the 6th seed. Not so sure about that.
Yep. No, I'm largely with you there. It's a very difficult game to just conceptualize with what the Kings are doing. I don't understand the Heat minus 6.5 line against the Wizards. The Heat need that game to keep pressure on Brooklyn. Although I guess Brooklyn are 13-point favorites against the Wrestling Magic, so maybe the Heat just pull everyone. These games are an absolute mess. It's just an exercise in predicting injury reports. I suspect the Celtics are going to sit a lot of guys tonight. If you're questionable on the Celtic injury report for today in a game that's 3 games in 4 nights and is completely meaningless as they're locked into the 2 seed, if you're questionable, that means you're out. So that's just one that I would monitor. But yeah, just keep an eye on those injury reports.
You know, it's a funny one. The most competitive game, according to the market, is the one that I'm almost certainly not going to watch, which is the Hornets versus the Rockets. Yeah, not going to be tuning in for that one. There's some hilarious wild stuff on this board. I guess Boston Toronto is the shortest line, right? -1.5. I read that as -11.5. So maybe, I like the Celtics there.
Yeah. Okay. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, good luck with your bets this weekend. Cheers.